All right, I'd like to call the Cable and Broadband Internet Commission to order. I guess we'll quickly just introduce ourselves once again, just for records. You want to start, Jim?
Jim Wilson.
Gary Lau.
Jeff Abrams.
Rob Capone?
Ash Chicory.
Suzanne Woodland, Regulatory Council Support Staff for the committee. And we also have online.
Right.
Louis Rodriguez.
Thank you, Louis.
Okay, so, all right. Next, electing of a chair.
I nominate Rob.
I'm happy to take it if there are others that would like it. I mean, it's really not.
I nominate Jim.
Rob.
All right, so I mean, I guess we need seconds, so,
Yes.
all right, so I assume yours is second.
Yes.
Anybody else want a second, Jim?
I'm an alternate, so
I mean, yeah, actually, can he as an alternate?
It would be unusual.
All right,
I haven't really thought about that, but it would be atypical.
all right. So you'd be a chair, but you'd be a non-voting chair,
Unless there's a big,
unless it's vacant. All right.
not like we don't normally come to consensus anyways.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So any other nominations?
So I would vote on the current nomination, and then if it fails,
Yes,
you could
okay.
put another name out.
So then as far as nominations, then I guess I don't know the proper.
So so someone moved to nominate you. I forget
Yes,
who.
Jeff did.
Jeff, okay, you seconded, so now you have a pending motion. You can have discussion on the pending motion. If you want to
So,
have any further
yeah.
discussion,
If-
and then you take a vote.
Anybody else? I'm happy to continue to serve if it's not, but
I think that would be great. I would think that you've done a good job of, kind of keeping everything going and, especially also like showing up and being part of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm down with that and think that we should take a vote on it unless anybody has anything else to say.
and yeah, and the big thing is like, I will work very hard to make sure that I'm here at every meeting, because I feel like the chair probably, it's good optics for the chair to always be at the meeting, so. All right.
Yeah.
So,
So make a motion to vote on that. I don't know. I don't know if I have to do it or Rob can do it.
The motion has already happened. All you need is.
Oh, okay.
all right, so call.
All right.
vote.
Yep. Aye.
Okay, thank you, Louis.
Anybody would call me?
Yep, go next. Are you a yes?
Yes.
All right, normally the chair votes last.
Yes.
Okay,
no.
Okay.
There's a quorum.
right, we've got the full five. Thank you. All right, so, and now you get to vote.
Yes. I'll take
Okay,
it.
all right. There we go. We got a chair. Okay, thank you for the housekeeping.
We're all good. All right, so, right, the next approval of the minutes, December and January meetings. Everybody had a chance to review them? Issues, problems, questions, concerns? All right, motion to accept the approval of meetings, second minutes for both December and January meetings. Got a second from Ash, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. All right, so item 4, cell phone coverage issues, next steps.
Yep, so couple of pieces. First, if you hop on to the commission's webpage, you'll see that it now includes information not only from Verizon on what to do if you have less than ideal service at your residence or business. There's now, remember, AT&T gave us some, or talked about giving us some information similar to what Verizon did, or like where to direct folks, which numbers to call and what some of the options might be for coverage issues. And so those are now on the commission webpage. So if you get, if you're having a conversation with someone, you can say, hey, if you're a Verizon or AT&T customer, check out what we have. It may not be the ideal solution, but it might provide you some solution and you can take a look at it. So that's piece number 1, that we updated the webpage with that information.
Cool, thank you.
And then we heard, and I thank Jim for this, Jim pointed out that the Economic Development Commission, the EDC, yeah. One of the committee members mentioned, you know, less than ideal cell phone coverage in the West End, particularly all the new businesses down there. Were you at that meeting?
No.
In any event, so you can see the clip. I'm happy to forward what Jim sent around. And we then followed up. You and I got an email from Bob
Yep.
Juska, who was pronouncing his last name incorrectly. Maheska. That might be bad. I let him know we were meeting, that I would bring this up today to see, you know, if we want to follow up with him more than kind of what I've already done, which is we've got some information on the website. I can forward his concern to AT&T and Verizon reps just to say, I know we talked about areas, here's the latest we're getting. Or if you want to send a representative to the next EDC meeting, you know, talk to the chair of the EDC and say, do you want someone to come and give a little summary about what we found out from our survey and, you know,
Right.
what we heard from the reps for Verizon and AT&T. So however you as a committee might want to respond to that, I'm happy to try and facilitate something.
Thoughts? Do we want to be a little more like, I guess I'm on the fence personally, and presenting something or not, because I think while I think the general population perhaps doesn't know that these options are available for us, it might be a little, at the same time, might be a little aggressive just to suddenly show up at the meeting. I don't know, any thoughts?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It's a conversation with the chair of the
Right.
EDC and see if we'd like to be on the
Yep.
agenda
Okay.
for a
got
little
it.
summary. Sorry if it wasn't clear.
No, it's fine. I don't know, thoughts, anybody, opinions? I think it might not be a bad idea, because I think.
I think so too. It would help the businesses just to know there are some resources for the small, you know, for the infrastructure that you can.
Outside.
Put in
of
your
the normal
business.
channels too.
Mhm.
Well, so again, it's one thing for Verizon and AT&T to just giving us this information. Let's, take it out for a spin, see how it works.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation starter, at least, to get the ball rolling if, and, as maybe our conversations progress, we would set up future meetings to brief them on whatever we find out as things kind of move forward. I think it was just again, with my availability being so bad, it's up to who would be available. If one of the committee members would be available to attend it and would be willing to do so, I think that no harm, no foul, and then it would also maybe bequeath this to get a quick kind of summary, so we can hand them something also and kind of help guide the conversation about what our findings are and where we're at and what we can discuss and whatever. I don't know, kind of come up with a summary page for that meeting.
Especially since we got such a low turnout on our surveys for businesses, it might.
Yep.
Would that survey potentially be able to be reactivated?
Well, I think they would be the ones who could reinitiate, or we could talk about a relaunch, or,
Right.
since they're the kind of powers that be. And
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm
Connection
just,
to the business.
just sort of thinking ahead, just trying to play the chess game one move ahead, being like, okay, if they are showing interest in the better ideas of getting out where the coverage is, as well as getting the word out that there are
there's some
holes
options.
that we could say, look, that we have had the survey in the past.
Yep, they'd be a strong ally to
There-
have.
Yeah, their next meeting is Friday, March 6th at 7:30 a.m. here. So it gives us a little bit of time to develop a little cheat sheet off of which someone could just provide a overview of what's been happening in this committee.
Yep.
And what we've heard so far.
I mean, and also, I mean, not to poo-poo your idea, Rob, but Well, you know, as
Yeah.
far as the survey, I think that we know what we need to know at this point. Yeah, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, especially with the meetings that we've had, where, you know, it's not like unknown that there's bad
Oh,
coverage in these areas. You know what I mean? Get
nope, we lost you. Hello there. We got two participants, so,
Yeah, we,
oh, did you self-mute?
No.
Can't hear you, Louis.
Oh,
No, sorry, it's just bad service. I'm just getting in my house now.
there we go.
I
Been one
guess
of these days.
my thought on that, the suggestion isn't so much to gather more information, but to perhaps let them know that, you know, it's one thing, I think if you're out there, one voice screaming in the wilderness all by yourself, but if they know that they can, as a group, put something together, which we can then be forwarding in a constant communication with the other providers, maybe that gives them a little more.
Incentive to deploy resources.
I have a
I don't know.
suggestion.
Yeah.
The carriers submit biannually to the FCC their coverage, right? And so it's geolocated as to where they say they are covering. And it's even available, that information is available from the state of New Hampshire all the way down to the street segment area. So it's quite
So we could coordinate.
granular, right? And the FCC asks that if you are not getting the service that we are being reported to by the carriers, we would like you to submit to the FCC that you're not getting that service. So I would like to move that we work with the, Granite and Broadband USA at UNH to get those maps and a link to the FCC. So anybody that does not get coverage can submit to the FCC if they're not getting coverage. And I think people would feel more individually empowered if they were talking straight to the FCC on the conversation.
I will say this, years ago, we did something a little bit similar with regard to cable. We actually put something on the cable website, or the cable committee website at the time. Website at the time, like how to file a complaint with.
It's not a complaint as such. It's just it's saying
The
that
coverage.
the data you
Right.
have is not correct.
Yeah. But we did something similar years ago for cable, and that was the issue
Right.
in terms of coverage, and
Yeah.
so that's not unreasonable at all.
So we could do both for cable and for wireless. And given our current contract, the franchise contract, maintaining, service, is
Right.
part of the contract.
I think a lot of the complaint, as far as cable goes, a lot of the complaints in the past have been,
Billing.
well, either billing or the ones that are no longer, where a lot of the complaints were, other than billing, were clarity and things of that nature that were due to the limits of the technology, bad terminating on coaxial cables. And I don't know how much of that is still relevant now that we're working with fiber, but I'm more thinking moving ahead with giving people a fast track to, like you said, provide question or, requests for reevaluation on cell coverage. Maybe not so much with cable, but we can put.
Yeah, but having FCC saying, funding for deployment and non-deployment funding, like from BEAD and all that, is depending on the data that's in those maps.
Right, yes, yep,
So it's important to the carriers that,
right,
that subject is covered.
yes.
All right, Lewis got knocked off and we're trying to fix the problem.
Oh, yeah.
So he's looking for the passcode, but it should be in his email.
Right.
As we don't, as Ash knows when. Yeah,
So we pass good.
that's okay. We'll give a minute, see if we can get in and going. So maybe. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So how do you envision this would work? Like, give me a,
So right now, if you go to the correct web links,
yep,
the state of New Hampshire publishes the data.
right,
Um, and as part of the map, you can put your address in, it goes down, says with, all that, and then you can press a button that files a notice of coverage.
got it.
Right, so all we would be doing is,
Pointing them to that
Right.
resource.
Right.
Perfect. Okay, so it's up to you
Yeah.
guys if you want me to work with,
Well, I'd like, if you don't mind, can we get it, could you forward the link to Suzanne?
certainly
So
can.
that she can then forward to everybody else,
Yep.
since you directly forwarding
Yep.
this meeting, which we could do. So,
intrigued.
but yes, that would be great, but at the same time, I'm intrigued, but I also don't feel like we have to wait till the next meeting to decide on it. I think tentatively I'd be okay with adding it to, start adding links to our page. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so you send it to me.
Yep.
I'll make sure it goes to Rob. Does anyone else want to look at it before we post it? Okay, Ash, okay, so there were two, we don't have a quorum yet. So if you two green light it, then I'll go ahead and we'll make it happen. How does that sound?
And I don't know, again, with Louis being in and out, I don't know, I'm wondering if I'd be happy.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't need a review before it goes out.
Okay. All right,
All right.
yeah, so
So you two.
Yeah.
All right,
Deal more than me. Good.
okay, all right. That's what I got.
all right. Anybody else? Next, move on.
Yes.
All right. Zoning changes.
I can speak to that. I have a meeting scheduled with Peter Sith. It's Thursday next week, Friday next week. I have sent him a package of documents. And it was my hope to meet with him to make sure that I haven't kind of thrown myself off the cliff on what I've sent to him. So
I can have a side conversation with you.
so in any case, our current zoning ordinances are pretty minimal relative to what the FCC, suggests for model ordinances and that sort of thing. So the conversation is going to kind of center around, how, is there something that the city is doing that covers the conversation? Or is this kind of like green, a greenfield effort to bring back to the committee? So I'll have that information I'd like to put on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah.
This conversation.
Yep, that sounds good. I looked at briefly some of the pieces, and if I can, now that I know I'm gonna be here next week, I'll see if I can make that.
Okay.
So,
And you have the invite for the,
You want to review it with, I guess I'm intrigued, but if it's still a little early to discuss it here, that's cool.
I did not look at it closely enough to be able to say, oh, this piece would be different. I could see it was different in structure. Because I'm always challenged when I look at our own zoning ordinance and I did not grab that because it would look different. But
try going through the FCC stuff.
yeah. So I don't feel like it would be useful to kind of break down a summary of what little bit I was kind of like, oh.
Okay.
But if you've looked at it more closely and want to give them any kind of summary of some of the challenges, I know as Peter Stiff mentioned to us when he went through kind of our existing ordinance, he mentioned that right now, because of interesting reasons, the existing ordinance only allows like a cell tower on municipal property.
Mm.
Which is
Right.
one of those things we might want to change. So that was I think there are some really big pieces, but relatively, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of pushback on that, actually.
Yeah, my issue is I don't know any, I'm coming into all of this kind of like the new kid. And so I don't know what the processes are for the ordinances in the city of
Oh,
Portsmouth.
would it be helpful if I explain how an ordinance gets changed? Particular
Sure,
planning?
please.
Sure. Good, thank you. So when it comes to changes in the zoning ordinance, typically what happens is that someone, usually at the staff level, will prepare proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. Or sometimes the consultant does, because our staff is pretty busy. And then those potential changes get taken to the planning board. And the planning board weighs in on it. They may have one or more meetings, kind of looking at the draft changes to the zoning ordinance. And then when it looks like there's something that the planning board can recommend, then it gets forwarded to the city council. And the way the city council works when it does an ordinance update, it's generally 3 readings. Well, actually, 3 readings, but there's usually a step before that where it's a request for first reading. So the city council basically looks at what the request is and decides whether to bring it forward. Now, sometimes they skip that preliminary step if it comes from another board, like a planning board, and they may go right to what's called first reading. So it's the first introduction of the ordinance. And changes can be made at that first reading. And then at second reading, it's public hearing. So it's second reading, public hearing, and there's a publication piece that happens between first and second reading. We actually still publish some stuff in the newspaper. Thank you very much, State of New Hampshire law. And so then there's a publication. And then there's, assuming it passes second reading, then it goes to third and final reading. Sometimes that third and final reading gets done right after second reading, like literally at the same meeting. So there's the process. So there's actually a fair amount of process before an ordinance, particularly a zoning ordinance, gets changed. But it happens, rather regularly. That's
Cool. It's a good idea.
Yep.
All right.
So that's what the process looks like. So, he'd work with, we collectively work at, with the planning board, but we'd start here with this commission, get your input, then take it to the planning board. Maybe there's even a joint meeting, because sometimes that's more effective, because then you're talking about it in one fell swoop rather, to both boards. Are we all good? Yep. Okay, ready to go to city council.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so we're good.
Good.
Right. Okay, so move on to any other business.
Yeah, let me bring something up. I had a pleasant surprise. When I asked the question, I came to the meeting the first time and asked the question about getting communications onto the agenda for treating communications as a public utility, right? Like water and sewer. So I met with the vision team and that sort of thing and got the survey. Turns out that for the 5 core values that reflect the cities for the vision, they're talking about vibrancy, our rich variety of organizations, businesses, and activities, authenticity, our city's historic character, and our ability to contribute to the city's ever-evolving identity through self-expression, diversity, full range of ages, incomes, and identities of Portsmouth community members, and our welcoming nature, connectivity, transportation and communication systems that work for everyone and bring our city together. So I am satisfied by that. So I think that gives us the running room we need to move in that direction.
Thank you very much. I meant to put that and suggest that on the agenda and then it slipped my mind. So yay, other business. So when we get a new city council, they typically do a little retreat and they adopt goals and vision, however you want to put it, and that's what Jim was summarizing.
Okay,
They adopted it at their last city council meeting. And they actually did, and this is why I meant to put on the agenda, they actually did say, oh, it'd be nice if all our committees saw our goals. So I'll actually circulate them so that you'll have them,
Be great.
you know. So, yeah, they were just adopted at the last meeting.
And they're doing legislative, I guess, intent or something similar to, their goals for, for legislation.
Yeah.
That might be worthwhile taking a
So there is a committee that typically meets, a legislative committee.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of look at pending legislation and kind of give alerts as to what might impact municipalities and sometimes make decisions on testifying in Concord with regard to particular pieces of legislation. But what typically gets done is, because so much arises quickly, is that the city council adopts their legislative policies. And basically it helps allow the mayor and staff to know, is this, when this bill in Concord comes up, is this the type of bill we would want to weigh in on one way or the other? So it helps make sure that we're kind of speaking with one voice to the extent we can. And so that's what's coming up on the city council agenda for the next meeting. Tuesday, Monday holiday. So, and the agenda will get published Friday morning, typically. So it'll be in the packet. At least I'm pretty sure it will be. I didn't see the agenda yet, the draft, but that's the other piece that Jim's been talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
is that so? Any other business?
I have a list.
Well, you two can, we got time. It's
Right.
5:30, so.
I was just going through, I was just kind of reviewing all the stuff for the cable commission, just going to be, helpful, kind of knowing the whole history and all that sort of stuff. And I came across something that was kind of interesting. And I said, in the notes of a public hearing, we were talking for the cable contract or the franchise agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said the franchise agreement does not regulate rates or programming. It covers basic service performance and system requirements, municipal drops, public access and government channels, and a local office. Internet and telephone services are not covered by the franchise agreement. All right, so it does not regulate rates. And so as I said, I was doing the zoning thing. I got into a lot of FCC stuff. And so I've read a lot of stuff, and something kind of pink in the back of my mind. So I want to bring this to your attention. You may not want to do anything with it, but I just want you to know about it.
Because we may have talked about it, because that's a broad statement, but I know
Right.
where you're going, I'm guessing.
Okay.
So
Does it include the subpart N?
I don't remember things by subparts, but there's a way to regulate rates, some portion of the rates,
And
but
it can be it could be viewed as being controversial. So
no, it's just hard to effectuate.
okay. I think all right. So I'm not, without being too obscure about it. So my understanding from reading, and I'm not a lawyer, obviously, from reading this stuff is that that the basic cable rate and associated equipment, the prices of that the prices for the basic cable rate and associated equipment might be able to be regulated by the franchise authority, City of Portsmouth, if the authority certifies the market as non-competitive. And one comment I'll make is that a lot of the stuff for FCC is to assure coverage and competitiveness. So they do not want monopoly markets. It's against their goals, right? So in FCC Title 47, Chapter 1, Subchapter C, Part 76, Subpart N, rate regulations, and then goes into non-competitive and how to go about, certifying a market being non-competitive. And then we have said publicly that the market is not competitive, right? And meeting minutes of 12 February 19, and we see it on our facts. So when you read the Cable Commission facts, it says we do not have a competitive market. I think there would be several advantages for discussing this path.
And so if I knew you were gonna bring this up, I would have prepped, but, and maybe we could always have a side conversation, but, we looked into this, now it's been years now since we looked into this, is that if you're going to try to regulate in that lower band by setting rates, it means you've got to hire a rate consultant to come up and figure out what those rates are. That's the very short version. And there has never been the interest in kind of making, because we're such a small community, compared to if you were a Boston or something like that, by the time you finish paying the rate consultant to actually come up and justify a different rate, what you would be getting for value for that small percentage of the population that chooses just basic cable. That was the kind of rough analysis, which is because we hire rate consultants for like water and sewer.
Right.
So that was always kind of the reason why when this has come up here and there, like, do we try and do some other path to get a lower basic rate? It just didn't seem to be an investment, nor have I seen other communities do it. At least.
So without
In the
diving
neighborhood.
too far into this conversation.
Yeah.
I think there could be other advantages other than just managing the rates.
So we could have another conversation and look at it.
Yeah.
See what we could report back.
Funding, for example.
Pardon?
Funding applications, for example.
Don't know about that, so I'd have to.
Like I say, conversation.
Yeah. We've already had a couple of conversations, so I think I know where he's going, but I need to think about that more.
Yeah.
Because I never looked at that. We were always looking at how could we justify a different rate than what Comcast is already showing in their
Right.
basic. So we had a kind of more narrow vision when we looked at, would it ever make sense for us to hire a consultant to get maybe a buck or two off the basic rate for our other residents, and didn't seem to make sense. And like I said, we kind of surveyed some other communities. And
I think the certification would be more important than the rate twiddling,
okay. So,
is my
yeah,
general feeling on the matter.
Got it.
So if we're talking about BEAD non-deployment funding, for example.
we've got to look at since I would have to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we're in the weeds, sorry.
We are, but that's where a lot of interesting stuff happens, is in the weeds.
I would agree.
All right.
It wouldn't be worth our while to network with other communities, have contracts with cable and get together with them and compare.
We've done that. I think that, sorry, Suzanne, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That's kind of, I think we've taken some notes from what others are doing, and like even our contract with Comcast was based, or at least we referenced other contracts of
Yeah,
nearby areas.
yeah, our contract looks pretty similar to all the other contracts in the state of New Hampshire. Because that's the way Comcast would want it to look, because otherwise they're administrating all of these, so. And there are common statutory pieces.
Communities of our size and larger and smaller.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So. So Jim and I can kind of chase down this kind of side angle if it's not about rates. This
Yeah,
other,
I think
whether
I
there's
think
a,
that, you know, sorry
Wait.
to interrupt. Yeah, whatever you decide is just going to be how much time and effort and then, like you said, money is going to turn out to be. So I think just, yeah, having that side conversation would be good.
So yes, well, that's it for now. Did you mentioned you have other things as well, or is that was the other piece? And
I have more germane things, I think. PPTV seems to have ceased operations. They're, no,
Months ago.
yeah, like September. Are they a access authority anymore?
so it was on my list to follow up to see what, if anything, what the entity is doing, because I know they had moved some of their equipment to the high school in the hopes that maybe they could do something there.
Mm.
But that was, if someone would like to follow up and kind of get the latest from them, I'm more than happy, I would take someone's, willingness to make some calls and check out, see how they're doing, or I can do that when I've got a little bandwidth. But it was on my list because I saw the franchise fee payment come in and I thought, oh, I wonder, makes me think of PPM TV and kind of what happened there. But I think it's worth following up and let's find out what's going on.
Have they disbanded? Or
I don't know. Like I said, last I knew they had gotten rid of all their paid employees and were just doing minimal. So they were out of the mall. They still had a drop point at that office above Jumpin' Jays, so in there, but they had also moved some of their stuff to the high school in the hopes that maybe they could get some traction in a program there, which is something we tried to do for years. There just wasn't the interest, so.
okay, yeah, because especially since they were at the mall that is going to be demolished. So yeah, okay.
So,
According to their website, it's just a volunteer,
Right.
kind of basically, I'd say a club, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, I don't know what other. It looks like they have some sort of donation system, so there's some money to probably do very bare minimum whatever they can do. But yeah, we should probably get some kind of more solid update.
Just as because I haven't looked at the franchise numbers, but at this point, are we projecting numbers that are going to be below so that nothing will be put into the trust?
that's exactly why I was wondering how they were doing. Last I checked, it was gonna be pretty close to 360.
Okay.
So if there was gonna be any money, it was not gonna be much.
Right.
But that's why I was wondering.
And then a
Because
crazy
we figure
question
out
to
whether
it.
we-
Okay, if as an entity they cease to exist, what happens to the money in the trust? Does it at that point?
There isn't much left, but I'm sure there's language in the trust. The city council set up the trust, so we could
Just wondering,
probably dissolve. the
kind of
trust.
asking this kind of question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but there wasn't much less left because we
right, yeah. they were
basically
pretty
tried to
much-
give as much as
Yep.
we could to them to just tap it out, but. Yep, so that's on my, thank you, that's on my list, so. Yep.
Right.
Yep, and at some point, if there's no programming on that channel 22, Comcast will take it back and fill it with some other kind of programming.
Right.
Or not channel 22, sorry, that channel 98, whatever they were using there.
Mhm.
Is there any, so we still have, but I mean, like I don't know, like what the future of like Portsmouth broadcasting is. Is everything just going to be completely YouTube? Is there zero interest in us, like, broadcasting anything? I'm trying to think of what else they broadcast. What do they broadcast? Like the Halloween parade and things like that? Or was that all PPM TV?
That was PPM TV.
Okay, that was all them.
And all the city meetings are handled by channel 22.
City
Um,
meetings, okay.
The city handles all those public meetings, but what happens, the games, for a while, years ago now, maybe they used to do some of the athletic events and broadcast some parts of those.
So really the city, the only thing that we have is just meetings. That's
Yes,
like under our sort of umbrella. Okay, yeah, so we probably wouldn't have a use for that channel, an additional channel.
yeah, and frankly, we have so many meetings that we're able to fill it. That's in part, well, and that was even true when we set up the second, tried to encourage the setup of the second channel. It's because in part we had an awful lot of meetings and we like to broadcast them live so people can participate if they want to, at least from home. Of course, then COVID hit. Now we have this other technology available that we didn't, frankly, for our meetings. So it's been an interesting landscape.
So I guess one question is that because meetings are now available via Zoom and you need a login or such like that, how do other committees handle people that are suddenly would like to participate, but it's a last minute? Like, is there usually a cutoff that or do they have somebody monitoring so they can?
Well, yes, usually someone's here managing. So if someone comes in halfway through, we'd still let them in.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the city council meetings are run as webinars,
Okay.
in which case they're coming in regardless without any
Yep.
click admit.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's more I was.
We don't do the full webinar piece here because it's just easier to set up as a meeting, a little easier to manage, our committee members who
Mhm.
are appearing remotely and sharing screens and that kind of stuff. So.
Got it. Okay.
So. Okay, PPA TV update, check out. Okay.
I don't know, would anybody wanna take that on or be more?
I'll ping them. Cause I do have an email
Oh.
for a couple of the new board members.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
And I do need to find out about the money, cause I saw the last franchise fee check come in and I was like, wonder what the total is, and I haven't seen accounting do the total yet. So it was on my radar screen, so. Way out there. In the distance.
I was just cleaning,
Yeah.
I was doing just Swedish death cleaning. Sorry about that.
So did you have more?
I have one more,
All right.
if I can torch you guys with that. And that is a reaction to the conversation with Michael Rapp of AT&T. Yeah, I have words.
Keep in mind, this is
Yeah,
recorded.
yep. No, I understand. So Michael, we were talking about CBRS, Citizens Band Radio Service on 5G. And Michael was talking about, the complexities of managing a 5G network and all that sort of stuff and internet. This is a little switch. It has router software on it. It has all the software required to run a wireless internet service provider, right? I can hook up 5G radios to this, commission the SIM cards, on the network and do all that sort of stuff on this. I bought this for $139. I have these pluggable frames are 10 gigabits. So I have 40 gigabits here. And I can plug fiber into here. I can plug Ethernet into here. So I can have 10 gig coming in to my house and 10 gig going to my local area network. And I have a switch that I'm playing with that is 40 gig on each panel, and it will support 96 10 gig taps with 8 40 gig uplinks. And I've got this, and it has a 2 terabit backplane. And I have this at my house, right? So as far as complexity, yes, networking is complex. And it does take expertise and all that sort of stuff. But Buy one of these and see how complex it is, right? Because you can run this. You can also run a fiber network with this. One of the elements in a fiber network is called the border network gateway, BNG, and this can run as a fiber optic PON BNG. Right, so I could run the not on this box, but one a bit bigger than this one, but I could run the city's fiber network with this as a BNG to the peering connections. So AT&T and everybody will love to tell you that life is really complex, and being in the software industry, I will generally agree. But this is an internet service provider's software platform, right? And then we were also talking about small cells, and I wanted to just show you, I always like toys. So this is a development kit. This is brand new. And what this is a radio. And as you can tell, it's pretty small. It has an antenna that goes along with it. And it's part of the Wi-Fi suite. Standards have been in place since around 2017, but it's been making progress. Anyway, the FCC standard for wireless broadband internet connections is 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up. All right. This is 40 megabits, so it's faster than the FCC requirements for broadband internet. And this will broadcast about a kilometer. Okay, so it's a small cell.
Right, because isn't that what they've been putting like on some of the buildings?
Yeah, so you could, quite frankly, you could have, I was gonna kind of do a little science experiment just to show, what could be done. But, the solar powered driveway lights.
Mhm.
All right, so I was just gonna kind of set up something where the solar panel just recharges a lithium battery and then runs this thing as a microcell, yeah, for Wi-Fi. This is Wi-Fi.
Okay,
So you can, with your phone, because when you use your phone at home, it goes over to Wi-Fi, right? So you're using your Wi-Fi connection to your broadband connection to do the phone calls on the network that you're paying, the cellular folks for. So you could use this to make calls, right? So if you had your phone and you're riding around town, and again, this goes for a kilometer, it goes for a kilometer. You could make your phone calls using this.
What's the power requirement for this to
It's
power?
1 watt.
1 watt.
It runs so it's really designed for IoT devices. So LoRa,
IoT is,
internet,
Thanks.
Internet of
Things.
Things, right?
okay.
Yeah, so LoRa, which is kind of the most energy efficient radio infrastructure right now, runs at about 1/10 of a watt. This is 1 watt. So it will run for months on batteries, right? And then Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff gets up more toward the 5 to 7 watts. And then, sometimes you can get it 20 watts, right? And that's where you want to start plugging in when you start getting to that. But this is, so a smart city infrastructure, right? Small cell for smart city sensors and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. People come to Portsmouth and want Wi-Fi. Yeah, we got it. All that sort of stuff. So the cells, that chip is the cell, right? So that's where technology is going. There's also 5G stuff. So I mentioned the CBRS. There are 5G routers that have antennas that you can use for doing that sort of stuff. And it runs on the same software as this little guy. So they're all part of the same network. So I can commission a CBRS 5G network in Portsmouth with this. Okay. So I appreciate AT&T's comments. And they're offering what they offer. But the other things that I would also point out is that the internet was originally designed to be the opposite of the phone company, right? So with the telephone, the handset you have is a very dumb thing. It's a mic, it's, speakers and, and a dial and a little bit of an electricity generator to generate the clicks on the wire. All the smarts were in the network, all the switches and everything like that. The internet is the opposite. The goal of the internet is the network itself is really dumb. There's really not a lot of intelligence other than routers and more, switches in the network. All the intelligence is at the edge. So what all the folks that are doing these big data centers and all that sort of stuff, they're trying to recreate the phone company where all the smarts in the network, right? And AT&T said the same thing. They want to do all the services in the network. I'm going, no, no, no. All the services are at the edge of the internet. So they're building the internet upside down. Okay. And so I think it's a threat to the internet in that direction, just to provide a technical assessment to that. And I know a lot of people who invented the internet are just kind of like getting radicalized over this subject. So I want Portsmouth to have a very resilient infrastructure, and the internet was originally designed to survive a nuclear attack. The way it's being designed now by the people who are, putting a lot of money into it, are making the internet more fragile, right? Which is anti-resilience. So I would like to spend some time kind of, to the extent the education is required to kind of bring folks on board with that notion, is provide that education, right? And how that's done. It also will help as we decide to do things going forward, to have a perspective on the subject. So, yeah, I just wanted to comment. I was like, yeah. So, yeah, Michael was he was very good. I mean, and I understand he's an excellent representative for his company, and he's doing what his company, is, he's pursuing his company's goals. So, he's an excellent representative.
Doesn't mean you have to agree with them.
That's right. And I don't.
I totally agree. I think that that there's definitely a viable threat of I guess you can call it in layman's way, like the proprietization of the internet. It's like you can have the internet this way. And so I think the difficulty lies in trying to kind of translate that into what type of actionable items as a municipality that we would be able to implement. In a perfect world, we could think about like a big infrastructure project, Portsmouth Wi-Fi kind of, what you mentioned before. I forget the name of that project that you had previously talked about. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is something worth pursuing and keeping on the back burner and pushing forward as to kind of keep in mind as we make these future decisions. Because I do agree that the way that it is being set up is a little bit counterintuitive to the original plan.
Well, I'd be happy to work with the committee to do exactly that.
So you mentioned the smart cities, because I used to get kind of information on sort of that evolving technology and choices that municipalities and counties often can make. The technology kind of pieces that you just rolled out, are those some of the pieces that some of the cities are deploying to be able to get more of that data-driven information that we're always talking about, like monitoring where's the free parking, all of those? Is that kind
The
of
range of things that can be done is amazing, right?
Okay.
So for example, a UNH put strain sensors on Memorial Bridge to see how the Memorial Bridge flexed, right? And that reports data back.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. Part of my history is I was the executive sponsor for ABB, who's a very large engineering consultant conglomerate out of Switzerland. They build dams and nuclear power plants and all that sort of stuff. And So the initiative that we did with them when I was at IBM is we put web servers on pumps and valves. So we could read the status of the valve and adjust the valve and all that sort of stuff. So that was the first time this thing called, that we now refer to as IoT, was done. So I have a little perspective on that whole subject as well. So yeah, there's data that can be gathered from all over the place. There's spectacular data that's coming off of geosynchronous satellites, right? So we need to capture all of that. We need to have all the people contributing their smarts to it, not just, AT&T with a particular service or Google with a particular service or, Palantir with a particular service and that sort of thing. And that's what the internet's all about, in my view. Yeah, to your point, Luis, is that putting a plan together to meet the vision for the master plan that meets these goals, I think is laudable. And I would like the committee to be central to doing that.
So that means we should, if the committee wants to kind of look at this further, when we do our agendas, we should just plan kind of like which, how we slot that in. If
Yeah.
there's gonna be a further conversation, make sure we make time for that, which is fine, because I think, I've got the other list of things here, but zoning takes a long time. So there's plenty of time if what I'm trying to say is if the committee wants to kind of run this further along, there will be time. We'll just make sure we build it into the agenda.
Okay.
And I think, because you and I had a conversation and I've been tapped since I came back, because I wanted to introduce you to some of the tech people
Yeah.
on the city side of the house who will have a greater appreciation than yours truly as the lawyer in terms of like, oh, there's a switch. Yeah. So we'll schedule that.
Yeah.
Because it would be helpful for you to in the first instance, see kind of what we have.
Yep.
What we don't have.
Yep.
And some historical things that we tried actually 20 years ago, which we had for a little while, because we did doing more, we were working with Cisco at the time. Anyway, so we've done some different pieces
Yeah.
to build and made different choices, and things, of course, with security get harder and harder to maintain, which is always a challenge. So we'll set up a time.
Well, we can talk about
that.
SASE and CD,
So-
SD-WANs and all those good acronyms and.
Yeah, there's a
abbreviated
which I am not gonna be
stuff.
part of those technical conversations, no offense, so.
So I appreciate your indulgence, but, yeah, I think
If
that,
the
I think
committee
there's
wants to
I think
hear
there's a
more,
real
then
opportunity here.
we'll-
I would,
We'll put it in the schedule, so it's kind of up to,
I think it's good. Right, thoughts?
okay,
Sure.
which means you guys get to pick a date or a couple of dates for the next meeting.
Anyone?
So, let's see, it's the 11th. So I may be away the week of March 23rd. So if you're looking at March, as long as if you like your Wednesdays at 5, I am good. The first 3 Wednesdays of
The 11th is
March.
open for me right now.
I would say because it's school vacation week and a lot of people are out. They're either, depending on whether they live in Maine, New Hampshire or Massachusetts, the next 2 weeks, a lot of people are taking one or the other weeks off. So my suggestion, if we want more time so that we could kind of figure out how to deploy information in this setting, I would shoot for either March 11th or March 18th. Cause that way there'd be time to do some homework and kind of take these ideas and,
Sure,
pardon?
sure, yeah. Anybody?
Yeah, fine.
On the 11th.
So 18th,
18th then?
Louis, 18th is good, right?
18th is okay for now.
Okay.
There
Well-
might be a Zoom one. I have early dismissal for the kids on that one, so we'll see how that goes.
Understood.
My
Okay.
kids are on a slightly different schedule, I feel, because they're in
Yep,
not at Little Harbor, but actually at MHT in Newcastle, and I don't know if that's why it's
okay,
different.
okay. Do you want to look at April while we're here? Just because it might be easier for people to place. Tax.
15th and 8th.
Again, April's, the last week of April is school vacation again, so the week of the 27th.
22nd, yep.
20
I'd say the 15th would be good for me, or the 8th of April, because even the week before vacation is crazy.
April 15th. Everyone get your taxes done beforehand?
Good extension.
Yeah, right,
All right,
good,
we'll start with that.
awesome,
Okay.
all right.
Or I can
Motion-
try and get this room.
Yes, right, got it, okay,
See.
all right, good then, so motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
thank you, Louis. I'm glad you're at least able to zoom in. That's great.
Thanks for accommodating, guys.
Hey, no problem.
Take care.
Because we have quorum, it's all good.